Welcome back to Flow State. Today I had the opportunity to interview Coach Anthony Rodriguez. A-Rod, as I call him, was my high school wrestling coach, but he's accrued 30 years now of varsity wrestling coach experience for the Fox Lane Foxes in Bedford, New York. He's one of the most established coaches in the area. He's won over 6 section titles. He's coached multiple state championships in the sport of wrestling, including his own son, who ended up being a Division I All-American wrestler. This is a very special podcast. I learned so much from this, even though I know this man for over 15 years. And I am really so appreciative of his time and sharing some of his knowledge with us, not only as a coach, but as a parent of a high-level athlete. Guys, enjoy this podcast. And if you do, please subscribe, rate, share, and review. Have a great day, guys. Enjoy the podcast. So how long have you been coaching Fox Lane now as the head coach, Coach Anthony Rodriguez?
As the head coach, this is my 7th season. I've been at Fox Lane since 2001, though.
Yes. Okay. So when you got to Fox Lane, you came in as an assistant. Was that your first time coaching?
No. I coached. I was an assistant coach at North Show from basically 1987 to about 2000.
And the funny thing is when I got to Fox Lane and started getting coached by Joe Musso, I think you came in maybe my freshman year, sophomore year?
Your freshman year. Yeah, it was your freshman year.
So it was very much a changing of the guard, so to speak, as I came in and you came in, and then Coach Musso was kind of making it toward the end of his career there. What year did Coach Musso end up retiring or stop coaching the team at least?
He stopped in 2012. We won the section 2004 with you, and then we won the section again in 2009, and then 11 and 12 we also won, and he got out after the 2012 season.
So he went out on a high note. So now
he went out on a high note, yeah.
So now recently you just won the section title again. So you went 2004, 2009, 2011, or excuse me.
2004, 2009, 2011, 2012, and then we won last year, and we won this year.
Wow. So we're looking at like 6 or 7 section titles. I don't know many other coaches in Section 1 right now, nor in history, have won that many titles. Do you feel like you bring what do you think you bring to the table that allows this much success to a program?
I think a lot of it is just communication, and I just have a good way of I have a good way, I think, of relating to the wrestlers, and it's funny, coaching. Anyone sort of can teach moves, and I think that's the easy part. And like when you're a coach, you're sort of a social worker, you're a psychologist, you're a father, a mother, you're a little bit of everything to them. And I think I'm pretty good at reading most of my athletes, and I sort of can relate to them. And I've had kids that have wrestled, and we all do a good job of communicating. And I think with the secret to coaching and to developing a program, and I sort of learned this obviously from Coach Musso, is that number one, you never make it about you. So it's never about me. It was never about Coach. And you sort of revolve everything around the kids, and you have to sort of develop a culture. Once you develop the culture, it sort of will grow and grow and grow. And that's sort of, I think, if I haven't done anything well, I think I've done that well.
Let's talk a little bit more about developing a culture. Nowadays, it's very easy for kids to get very complacent. There's so many distractions nowadays. And I imagine you've probably seen this huge shift in the last decade from kids being maybe more gung-ho about sport. Now they're like stretched thinner. Do you see a shift in that within wrestling, or is that something that happens with kids in general these days? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a good question. If anything, I think especially if we go back to when you were in high school and you
Yep.
played three sports.
Yep.
And, I grew up in an era where everyone played three sports. There were no club teams. There were no travel teams. You just played. You played football and then whatever sport you played. It was football, basketball, wrestling,
Yep.
baseball. And I think, which I'm not really a big fan of, I think we're running into this area of specialization where kids are only playing one sport. And I think it's sort of sad that kids lose. There's so many kids that could be, star players in a lot of sports, and they only choose one. And I think it's short-sighted because they're looking at potentially, well, if I concentrate on one sport, I'll be better, and then this way I can potentially get money to play in college, and it's sort of unrealistic.
Yeah. Do you see that kids burn out a little bit more easily with this philosophy as well?
With wrestling, yes. With wrestling, yes. Definitely with wrestling. I think with all sports, to be honest with you, but with wrestling, yes, because a lot of times when you have kids that are coming, they're like youth kids, and the youth wrestling is so intense.
Yeah.
It's too intense. It's just too intense, and uh, you'll get kids that will win, like these, national titles, and they'll say world titles, and they get all these trophies and accolades before they even get to high school,
Yep.
and then they wrestle in high school, and the reality is, unless you're in Pennsylvania, like we wrestle, we have obviously we have a pretty good program, but it's not like we have a lot of people come to our matches. If we get 30, 40, 50 people, that's a lot,
Yeah.
and it's just hard. Wrestling is a hard sport. So I've seen so many kids over the years that could have been really, really, you know, um, excellent high school wrestlers, and they never make it sometimes past ninth or 10th grade. Or what they'll do is they'll finish high school, but they lose the love for it, and it's almost like they're doing it because they feel like they have to do it. And even some of them will go to college, but when they go to college, and now they're sort of away from their family or their family unit, and they'll wrestle for a year or two, and then they realize like I'm not doing this anymore, and they stop. It's so sad.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most prolific sport of kids getting a scholarship or going to with the intent of wrestling. And the intensity of wrestling makes it nearly impossible for you to just suffer through and just be like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to kind of coast. You can't coast in wrestling. There's just no way, right?
Yeah, no, there's no way. And the thing is, see, the problem is um, there are like you talk about money and kids getting money, and there is no money. So in college, there's 9.9 scholarships, which is divvied up amongst sometimes 15, 20 wrestlers.
Yeah.
So when you hear people say, I'm getting a full ride, it's just not true.
Yep.
We had a wrestler last year who graduated. He was a 6 year um, varsity wrestler, and he actually broke most of the records at Fox Lane, if not all of them. He was a three-time state finalist. He won 250 matches,
Oh
and
man.
and you know how much money he got? He's wrestling at NC State now, and he had no money, zero money. So there's like people are like I hear people talk about money like that kid didn't get money. Your kid's not getting money. Like you're not getting money to take third in the section.
Yeah.
So it's very very hard to get money. I mean, for you to get money, you sort of got to go to Fargo, and you got to be an All American at Fargo. If you're an All American at Fargo, then you're going to get money. But just being a state champ, you're not really going to get. I mean, listen, being a state champ, maybe you get 5,000, 10,000, but that's it. You're not getting. People like talking about full rides. It's just not happening.
Yeah, and these days, getting 5 or 10 grand is just a spit in the ocean relative to what some of these schools are actually charging for admission, right?
Oh God, yes, of course. I mean, some of these schools are 50, $60,000 a year. So it's very difficult. It's hard. It's just really, really hard. And I again, just a few weeks ago, there was a parent from a kid from another school who was a good wrestler. He's a good wrestler, and the father was talking to me about like, oh, this is important this year so we can get money. Now, I'm not going to say anything to the guy, but I was
Yeah.
just thinking to myself, get money. Your kid hasn't, he hasn't won the section yet.
Yeah.
He's a senior. He's not getting money.
Now,
So
yeah, go ahead.
no one. I think that happens in not just wrestling, in all sports,
Yeah.
where I think you get these parents that'll divvy out thousands of dollars and with baseball. They have like all these baseball clubs and all
Yep.
these things, and they're getting sold on spend the money now, you're going to save it later. And it's just it's not realistic, and it's sort of like I sit there and I hear some of the stuff and I cringe. Like I have a friend who son graduated a couple of years ago, and he told me he spent over $100,000 over the course of his son's you know um, career up till 18 on baseball. And is he playing in college? No. So it's really it's sort of crazy.
Yeah, there's really a no-win situation with most of this, and if you're not adding to the kids' overall worth, you're actually just kind of wasting money in the process, right?
Right. I mean, what I try to tell kids, and I even tell this to parents about wrestling, and I basically tell them, like, you know, if you're looking to get money, then maybe you need to do better in school because it's not
Yeah.
happening through wrestling. And the one thing wrestling though will do, and we've had it, a lot of kids at Fox Lane and from other kids in Section 1, is it will give you the opportunity to get into a school that you might not be able to get into.
Yes.
So like we've had kids wrestle at Princeton, we've had kids wrestle at Penn, and there's some other kids around the section, that are wrestling in, Bucknell, Harvard. Those are obviously amazing schools that with wrestling, it helps them get into that school. Where if they didn't wrestle and they were just a normal student, they're not getting in.
So is that something you might recommend toward parents in general? Like, listen, instead of putting the pressure on getting to one of these Iowas or Penn States, listen, like in terms of the overall worth of the experience, you want to use that as a way of getting your foot in the door somewhere that you wouldn't necessarily be able to solely academically, right?
Yes, exactly. See, listen, I love wrestling. I mean, wrestling is obviously a major passion, and it's a major part of my life. But it's the thing with wrestling is this. All right, you wrestle in high school, and if you're lucky enough, you go to college. And if you get to college, listen, you can be an All-American or a national champion. I think that's an amazing thing. But it sort of ends right there,
Yeah.
where like you have kids that like we'll watch the NCAAs and next month, and guys who are basically maybe top 10 in the world, top 10 in the world if you played baseball or basketball or football, you're talking, or golf or anything, you're
Yeah.
talking millions and millions of dollars. Top 10 in the world of wrestling is worth about maybe $50,000.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Is sort of it sort of comes to a crashing halt once you get to college. So again, I mean I've done this a lot. And I sold this to a lot of parents. It's like, listen, this will help your son have a better life. He'll get into a Penn, go get into the Wharton School of Business. And yeah, whether he becomes a national champion or not is irrelevant. He'll have the experience of going to this school, getting a quality education, and then having a chance to go on and have a quality life.
I say the
And
same.
that's what
Oh,
wrestling does. That's what
yeah.
wrestling does.
Yeah, I say that I've obviously I wrestled in high school and I had some aspirations of wrestling in college, but it just didn't go that route, and I ended up playing 4 years of lacrosse at Stony Brook. But coaching now, and I've been coaching lacrosse for on and off for since 2004. So at this point, about 15 years, I'm actually the high school lacrosse coach down here in Delray Beach for Atlantic Community High School. But one thing that I really talk to youth lacrosse players about, especially parents, is getting to the best school possible, because there
Exactly.
is no pro lacrosse where these guys are making millions of dollars a year. It's your pro level is trying to get them into an Ivy League school or a Duke or a UNC, something that's going to set them up for life.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same. It's very similar. The two sports in terms of that are very similar. And it's the same thing with wrestling. Like D1 wrestling is like the pros, but it's the pros where you're not getting paid.
Yeah.
That's the only problem. You're not getting paid. Uh, but yeah, no, that I mean, see, the thing is people I think have to be realistic when they talk about like even like with young kids. I teach middle school, and I come across some really good athletes.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about like being a major league or a pro, and it's a dream. I mean, I was a kid, I dreamed. We all dreamed it.
Yep.
But it's literally you have a better chance of hitting the lottery And it takes so much work. It takes so much luck. You got to be in the right place at the right time. There's so many factors that go into it. But the bottom line, and like I preach this all the time, the bottom line where the kids have control is school. And if
Yep.
they do well in school, school is the equalizer, and they can become anything they want with school. And if you look at wrestling, and like let's look at New York, obviously that's where I'm coaching and where you wrestled. If you look at the 4 or 5 greatest wrestlers in the history of New York, well, the one common denominator is they all went to Ivy League schools. They
Yep.
went to Harvard, they went to Cornell.
Cornell.
So there's a correlation of success and school anyway.
It's a very good point because I think a lot of parents don't understand that to be successful in wrestling means that you could basically be successful in anything that you do. Would you agree?
Exactly. Oh yes, and even companies and corporations, they like hiring guys that are wrestlers because they know that the wrestler is basically gonna go through a wall for you.
Yep.
And anyone who's wrestled at any type of level, you're gonna deal with ups and downs, and you deal with adversity. It's hard. When you wrestle, you think about it, you go out and you wrestle, and you're totally exposed. And sometimes you wrestle a guy and he's just bigger, better, and you're exposed where you could play football and you could be the left guard on a team and your team could win 28-0. But meanwhile, you might not have a good game. And the only person who will know that would probably be your father in the stands and then the coach when he watches the film on the next day.
Yeah.
So you can sort of hide where there's nowhere to hide in wrestling. And that's the beauty of the sport.
Yeah, I think it leads to a whole level of vulnerability that a 13-year-old will never be exposed to had they played any other sport. Like you said, a team sport. The only thing you can maybe think of is another individual sport. But even then, you're not really combating anybody else doing that either, right?
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, I definitely see that.
Well, you know what it is too? I think, it's funny, like people sometimes will ask me like, what's my the pleasure in coaching and this and that. And
Yeah.
it's nice when you have kids, when when your team does well, it's obviously it's nice. I mean, no one's going to I'm not going to sit here and tell you that doesn't count. But for me, it is sometimes seeing a kid, and we've had a lot of these over the years where they sort of come into the room in ninth grade and they're sort of like the kid that's there, but no one notices.
Yeah.
And they come into the room and they struggle. They struggle. Like I was a kid this year he struggled mightily. I mean, they would literally every day in the room get killed, and every day they would come back, and that would impress me so much that they had the perseverance to just keep coming back. And those kids, I have a lot of kids now. Most of my kids don't become section champs or state champs, but those are the kids I think who stay with it, and I see by the time they graduate, and again, they might not even have winning records, they might not even be in the lineup, but you can see how they carry themselves, the confidence, how they interact with people, and it's a positive thing, and that seriously is one of the things that I really, really enjoy more than anything. And you're seeing young men come into the sport and leaving as men, and it's not about wins and losses.
Yeah, and you really can't say that about every other sport because there's so much politics about it. There's so much, who are we playing, whatever. You don't have that in wrestling because it really only comes down to you and the other guy. You could be on the worst team in the entire section, and you could be a state champ.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly it. And that's the thing that with wrestling is very hard. It's hard. Listen, wrestling is the hardest sport I think on parents too, because again, your son could be on the baseball team and he could be in the state championship, and his son goes 3 for 3, and they lose, 4-1, but he has a good game. Well, you get upset that they lost, but you're like, okay. But with wrestling, it's the total different. There's always out there that's better than you, and it's almost like you're playing in a high stakes game of poker, and the wins are great, and then the losses become devastating, and it's hard. And at the end of the season, when we go to the state tournament next week, there's only going to be potentially 15 guys, 30, because there's 2 divisions, 30 kids that are truly going to be happy.
Yeah.
To 30 kids to end the season when there's 15,000 kids who start the season in November.
Wow. So now that the season is over, the regular season, now we're going into the state championships here. How many wrestlers do you have wrestling in the state tournament there, Coach?
We have 3. So we have our 99, our 120, and our 160.
And were these wrestlers kind of slated to be performing at this level, or are they any of these shockers?
No, no, they were all pretty much expected. The 99 pounder last year took fourth,
Yep.
and he really should have took third. If he took third, he would have made the state tournament last year.
Yep.
He's a ninth grader. My
Wow.
120 pounder lost in the section final last year. He actually lost in the section final this year, but he made it on what's called a wild card. So we found out yesterday that he's going. And my 60 pounder last year took sixth, but he got hurt. He got hurt in the sectionals, and he was a pretty big favorite going in this year. But it's not easy to win it. It's
No.
and he did a great job. And actually, he has a little bit of a knee injury that he had to overcome. But the three of them are going. The best thing about it is, my 99 pounder is a freshman, and my 60 pounder is a junior. I really only have one senior.
Wow. Okay. So winning a section championship with one true senior, obviously it's probably leads you to want to kind of continue on a little longer. And I'm just kind of looking up right now. You're approaching that 30-year mark in coaching. Is that right? Am I right?
Yes, this is year 30. I'm
Holy
actually,
moly.
it's pretty scary that I'm 55 and year 30, I can actually retire if I want to, which I don't enjoy saying.
Yeah, exactly. There's the revelation that, oh my God, I'm finally getting old.
Yes, exactly. I've
But
been
if
fighting
there's
that
one
for a
thing I
while.
will say, that Coach Amuso, even when he was, I don't know how old he was, probably 60s, he was still wrestling on a regular basis, still throwing around weights. And I don't know the last time you've seen him, but I imagine he's probably at least in the gym every day.
He looks, he comes to all our home matches, and
No kidding.
yes, he's one of our biggest supporters, and he still looks the same. He still looks the same, and he's great. He comes, like I said, he does the clock at the
Oh,
home
so
matches,
cool.
and even last year, because in New York State now we have a what's called a Do Me Championship.
Yep.
So we won the Do Me Championship last year, and he actually came up with me and coached.
Oh, wow. That's so
So that was
cool.
pretty cool. That was cool. And we actually won the Do Me Championship again this year. So he didn't come up this year, but he's great. He's great, and I've learned so much from him. And I sort of a lot of the things that we do now were modeled after what he did.
Absolutely. I mean, even when I was at the Section 1 banquet, he was known as the godfather of Section 1 wrestling. And to hear that, 15 years later, he's still got a hand in things. That's a really cool thing to think about.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt. There's like I said, he will always be like he had the record. I think the record was he had 406 wins, and a couple of people passed him. But to me, he's always going to be, he's the godfather and the dean of the coaches. And it doesn't matter wins. See, if he was coaching today, started his career today, he would have had 800 wins.
Oh, wow. Just the
Because we
amount of
had
matches that you have now.
yeah, oh, forget it. Last year we had 27 duels. This year we had 27 duels this year.
Yeah.
So imagine for 40 years if he's getting 27 duels on his team, he would have had 800 wins.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, definitely the sport has evolved quite significantly. But before we jump topics too much, obviously this year you had an addition to your coaching staff. Do you want to speak a little bit about coaching with your son?
Well, that was actually last year because he's actually coaching. I coached with him last year.
Okay.
This year he's coaching at Old Dominion.
Oh, that's right. He
Old
got
Dominion.
a coaching job at college. But how was
Yes.
it coaching your son, because you were Steven's coach during high school? Is that correct?
Yes. He was. Listen, I was very lucky, and I always tell people this. I couldn't have been luckier coaching him because he loved it, and he literally came with me. And as uh, you know, he was with me from day one. I mean, he literally
Yeah.
was a baby, and he was coming to the matches,
Yep.
and he loved it. He always wanted to come. He always wanted to learn, and he just was like a gym rat.
Yep.
And it goes so fast, and he's 26 now, and his career. I mean, he had a great career. I mean, he worked so hard, and he was so passionate about it, and he won the state title his senior year. And then he had some, trials and tribulations because he went to Rutgers, and
Yep.
that really didn't work out. and he ends up at Illinois, and
Yep.
he had two pretty major knee surgeries that he had to overcome, and he was cutting way too much weight, and that was a problem with him in college. Um, but then his senior year, he finally decided he advocated for himself, and he was a 141 pounder, and he's like, I'm going 165. No one's ever done that, going up 3 weights in one season.
Yeah.
And he goes up, and he had the year of his life, and he ended up being it was a dream, because you think about it, he always loved Iowa as a kid, and the Big Tens that year were at Iowa.
Wow.
So he wrestled at Iowa. He took third for the Big Tens. Then the NCAAs are in Madison Square Garden. Where
Yep.
how many times did I take him to Ranger and Islander game? I mean, Nick games.
Yeah.
And he had an amazing tournament and some really great matches, close matches, and he took fifth. And he went out part of the way he wanted to go out. I mean, he wanted to be a national champion, but he certainly went out on a really high note.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And,
So, go ahead.
Well, no. So he went to Stanford.
Yep.
And he was coaching there.
Yep.
And then he decided to come home, and he wanted to potentially work, do club wrestling. And for me, I'll be honest with you, like, listen, we've had a lot of success, had a lot of great wrestlers, including yourself, who believe it or not, I still talk about you in the room, and that's the truth. That really is the truth. I'm not lying to you. But listen, when you coach your son and he wins 4 section titles, and we had 3 team titles with him.
Yep.
And then he wins a state title, and you pretty much, how many people can say they did that? So the final part, which I never thought would happen, would be my final dream would be like, I want to coach him. I'm not coach him, coach with him.
Yeah.
And he comes back, and then sure enough, he's like, I want to coach with you. So it was great. It was amazing. The first day, it's funny, and his knowledge is like surpassed me. Like, he's forgotten more wrestling than I know.
Yeah.
And the first day of practice, he still deferred a little bit to me.
Yeah.
And I went home that night. I'm like, Steven, run the damn thing. And he coached the team, and I'll tell you, he was amazing. And he has like a system that he uses that is a little bit unique that no one else really does. And in the beginning, I sort of had, a couple of reservations, but we spoke, and I let him do it. I'm like, he knows, right? Like I said, he's forgotten more than I know.
Yeah. And
the system is amazing. And the team last year just exploded. And I told people that because of last year, the impact he would make would be this year. And he's not even here.
Yes.
And sure enough, that's happened. And it was great. It was amazing. We won the section together. As coaches, we coached kids at the state. We had a kid who went to state finals. So we did that together. I ended up getting Coach of the Year, and he got put into the Section 1 Hall of Fame all in 1 year. So it was a dream. It was a complete dream. And we sort of, we crossed all the boxes. We did everything in 1 year. We did everything in 1 year. And then he had the opportunity to coach at Old Dominion.
Yep.
And one of his former teammates is the associate head coach. So he sort of jumped at that. Opportunity, and now he's there. So, but he was great. He was so great. He's so great with the kids, and his level of knowledge is just insane. I learned so much. I mean, seriously, I think in 1 year, I learned as much in 1 year than I learned in 28 other years coaching.
That's special.
So
that's really
it was good. It was really good.
Yeah. So, kind of switching it up a little bit. So going kind of back to the changes in culture in, high school students, do you feel a shift in the way that kids approach wrestling or approach sports in general nowadays? I know for me in particular, I've been coaching in an area of the country where the sport isn't the dominant sport. If you think Florida, you're not thinking lacrosse, you're thinking football, baseball, right? So, but I've talked to other coaches in other sports, and even within the area within my sport of like up in Westchester County and lacrosse, and they say that the kids are getting a little bit more stretched thin. Is this something that you're seeing? Is this something that's part of infiltrating wrestling culture in general?
Definitely. Kids at all ages are getting stretched thin, and even what happens, even with wrestling, this happens. And I have a lot of kids. Most of my, I probably have like 35 kids. I would say 20 of them belong to clubs. And what
Wow.
ends up happening is we practice, like we'll practice, and after our and our practice is not easy. It's not like we sit around and
Oh yeah.
and hang out. We go, and then they'll go to club practice. They'll go home, have something to eat, and then they'll have club practice, and then come home and then do homework.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It is really really hard, and they have to learn to manage their time. And then sometimes if you have kids that are cutting weight, it's not easy. It's almost too much sometimes. And I sometimes have to like try to explain to someone. I'm like, less is more. Like there's an old adage like with fighters back in the day when they would be like, don't leave the fight in the gym.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can overtrain.
Oh yeah.
So but it's hard. It's hard to try to sometimes convey that to kids in terms of when they have to know when they have to almost listen to their body. In all aspects. And I try to preach, in terms of nutrition and hygiene and, getting sleep and doing all those things. But it's just not easy to do when you got 4 EP classes.
Yeah.
So yeah, kids are definitely being stretched way too. It's too much. It's too much stuff going on. And I think there's a lot of pressure on kids, especially with, kids in terms of, even just with school and trying to get into good colleges and stuff. It's hard. It's hard to be a kid today. I think it was a lot easier when I was younger.
Yeah, I think information changes situations, and I think that now everybody sees these paths that kids have to take, and they're like, "My kid's got to take that path," and then they try to kind of force a square peg into a round hole a little bit. But do you see any level of distraction? Like, obviously, cell phones are much more prevalent these days. Gaming's more prevalent. Social media is more prevalent. Do you see that infiltrating like the wrestling room, or is that something
Oh,
that
yeah, well,
maybe?
yeah, no. I mean, listen, it can. It definitely does. The good kids, I always say, like one of my sayings to the kids is, distraction is the enemy of greatness.
Mm,
So, and there are many distractions, and like you said, between uh, cell phones and all the stuff like that. I mean, that's just dangerous, and its own social media is so dangerous.
yeah.
And you have young kids that are doing stuff, and it's just they sometimes make poor decisions, and that doesn't help matters. And again, it's just kids have to be, they sort of got to be directed, but it's easier said than done. And it's hard for parents too. I mean, the stuff that goes on cell phones is dangerous. It really is. So, as much as all the technology is great in so many different ways, it hurts. It hurts kids. It really can hurt kids.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, in what ways do you think technology and the advances of social media and stuff have helped the sport? And we'll start there. Like, because I remember back in the day, the only way we would find out about anything is a newspaper clipping. You remember
Right.
running out and getting the low HUD
Yes, the
at
low
the
HUD and see the rankings.
exactly. Or what
Right.
happened to this dual meet? Or you call coaches like, oh, who won this and what weight did this
Right.
guy
Right.
go? What
Well,
has
no.
changed since those days?
Well, no. I'll tell you, technology, in terms of, again, there's negative things to it too, but it has raised the level of wrestling. It's funny.
Okay.
Funny you asked me this question because I was talking to a coach today at practice about this, and there is so much wrestling out there where you can just YouTube or Flow Wrestling,
Yep.
and there's so much technique. And if you go back and you look at matches from like 1980,
Yeah.
and some of like Schultz and Bannock, which are two of the all-time greatest matches ever.
Yep.
And I was watching a match the other day, and these guys are amazing wrestlers or amazing athletes, but they were so sloppy. And even back then, guys didn't wrestle 12 months a year. So the technology in terms of, there is no secrets now. Everybody knows everyone.
Yep.
So if you're a left leg lead and you're hitting, whatever move you decide you're going to hit, and that's your go-to, well, there's a good chance your opponent is going to know that just as well as you do.
Yeah.
So because of that, you sort of you got to raise your game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's so much opportunity to improve just through the event of video. It's amazing. Like years ago, like even at the NCAA tournament, guys would come in and no one would know anything about it. Like, who is this guy? What does he do? Now there are no secrets. There's no secrets anymore.
Yeah, that's an absolutely amazing point, and it's almost like, you know, you might know more about this opponent than they know about themselves.
Oh, exactly, exactly. Yeah, you could break someone down. It's really not. It's not that hard. It really isn't, because if you watch someone and you see what their go-to is, you know what I mean, and you just watch and watch and watch, and you can, and it's almost like, I'm a Yankee fan, and they were talking about Severino last year, who struggled at the end of the year,
Yeah.
and supposedly he was tipping his pitches.
Ah.
Well, it's the same thing with wrestling. You could come up with patterns that kids do, and if you watch close enough, now again, you gotta be able to do it,
Oh, of course.
but you can definitely pick up patterns. There's no question about it. Even the greatest guys will do that. Just like, hey, Jordan Burroughs hits a double, and we all know he's going to hit it. Well, just try to stop it.
Stop it.
You know what I mean? And like Cael Sanderson was going to hit the ankle pick, and everyone knew it, but you couldn't stop it.
Exactly. So obviously we've kind of covered the good. Where does this get ugly with the advent of technology and social media and that kind of stuff?
Well, what happens is, kids are kids, and kids do stupid things. And what happens is this: because of cell phones, the world is a smaller place.
Yep.
So where kids would do things and sort of sometimes get away with it, there's no getting away with anything anymore. And if you do something stupid, you're gonna most likely someone's gonna have it on video.
Yep.
And I deal with this in my school every day teaching, where the kids have their phones out all the time, and they're always constantly taking pictures and video, and uh, it's sort of a dangerous thing, because kids are prone. The problem with, especially teenagers, is they all think that it's never going to happen to them, and, oh, I won't get caught, or I'm good, and they're prone to make mistakes. And the problem is with the cell phone is sometimes you don't get a second chance. You
Yep.
do something really stupid, it's a good chance someone's going to find out about it. And even like with Facebook and Instagram, like we talk about this with my team every year, where you could be at a party, and let's say you're at a party, and just say a kid's drinking a beer, someone else is taking a picture of someone else. You know what I mean? And they're posting it on Facebook, and you're in that picture.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And where 20 years ago, 10 years ago, then you wouldn't have to, the kid wouldn't have to really worry about that.
Yep.
Now you do. There was a wrestler a few years ago who was going to Brown, and he was a very good wrestler. He was going to Brown, and he got caught in one of those internet things, and Brown and Brown declined him.
Wow.
He couldn't go. Yeah.
No kidding. So obviously there's not, obviously we're taking lots of positives, but also there's huge responsibility in this, and you really kind of gotta keep your nose even more clean these days, because there's a camera around every corner pretty much.
Yeah, no, there's no question. They have to be, they got to be smart. And unfortunately, again, especially with the picture taking, and it's dangerous. It really, really is dangerous. And the kids they sort of got to be on their game all the time. And I know, listen, I know parents preach, and I know we preach all the time about just trying to do the right thing all the time.
Yep.
And for the most part, I think the kids do, but listen, they're kids and they're gonna make mistakes.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have like kind of pathways to forgiveness. You know what I mean?
Oh, of course, yes, no, of course. I mean, that's the thing, and I think that's where also the communication part comes in, where you have to be able to communicate in a positive way with kids. It's so important to do that. And then what happens is that if you can do that, you can develop a level of trust.
Yep.
With them, and it can't be, whether you're teaching or coaching, even like especially with teaching, it can't be you against them. It has to be like, the kids have to know that you want them to do well.
Yeah.
And a lot of times kids don't realize that. Kids look at a teacher as the adversary.
Yep.
Where she's against me or he's against me, and it's the opposite. I try to explain to all my classes, like, listen, I want you to get an A. I'm not giving you an A, but my goal is for you to get an A. Just like the basketball coach, when the kid's shooting a foul shot, he's not rooting for him to miss. But again, I think that point has to be conveyed to the kids, and not just once. You got to constantly convey that. And I think kids are smart. if you care and you truly care about the kids that you teach, the kids will pick up on it.
Yep.
And words don't mean anything. They know. The kids know. But if you really truly care, and the kids will pick up on that, and I think you have a better chance of the kids responding in a positive way to you.
So, I mean, I just take that golden nugget now, and I definitely feel that within myself that if you're disingenuine, the kids will pick up on it, right?
Oh, definitely. There's not a question. The kids pick up on it big time. I remember I was in college, and I didn't play any sports in college.
Yep.
And one of my a friend of mine in a class played football, and we walked down the hall, and the football coach walked by him and didn't say one word to him. And that always struck me, like, now the guy didn't say anything to me. He didn't say anything to me, like, oh, but I'm like, how are you going to get the most out of your athletes? You
Yep.
can't even say hello to the guy. Like, you can't say hello to him, but you want him to run through a wall for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, I think a lot of it just comes back to very simple communication, showing the kids that you care, telling them a good job, and you got to tell them constantly. And if they have a bad day in practice, it's okay. Good job. We'll get them tomorrow. And I think if you can do that, you'll get more out of your kids. Your kids will be more motivated, and if your kids trust you, I think you have a better chance of gaining respect. And with respect, you have more success.
That's a great point. Now, you weren't one to blow up too bad in the wrestling room or on while coaching. However, like, do you have experiences where you kind of lose your shit a little bit?
Well, I'll tell you, that's great. I'm glad you bring this up. So I am, I am definitely an emotional person. There's no question about it. And then when I coached at Nurse Show, and I coached with another emotional coach. So when I came to Fox Lane, I'm still, emotional person. And, the first couple of years I'm watching and, learning from Coach Musso, and I'm trying to, pick my spots and, when to say something, when not to say anything. And I learned something from Coach Musso that was so valuable, is when a kid lost a bad match. And I know, like, my previous years coaching, if a kid lost a bad match, sometimes I'd get in his face right after the match and you yell at him. And Coach Musso never did. And he never did. He'd be annoyed. He'd be mad. But when he was really mad, he would just walk away.
Yeah.
He would just walk away. And sometimes he might say something to the kid later, and maybe he never did. You know what I mean? And I think by the value of doing that, especially with the sport of wrestling, it's a kid loses a bad match. He knows he lost a bad match. He doesn't need anyone to tell him. So if I start screaming and yelling at him, the emphasis gets put on me.
Yes.
And instead of I blew the match, coach is an asshole.
Yep. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And screw the coach. And so I learned that, and I sort of do that a lot. And the kids on my team will laugh. They know when I'm mad because I walk away.
Yep.
Either a lot of times I throw gum, but they're like, the two things I'll do is I'll throw a piece of gum or I walk away.
Yep.
And it really goes a long way. And what I try to do sometimes is, it's going to sound bad, but it's you guilt the kids. You guilt them into feeling bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it goes a long way than screaming and yelling and completely undressing a kid, because that, at the end of the day, really, really doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't help because the kid knows. The kids know. They know. So you got to, it's a time and a place. I think also coaching is knowing when to say the right thing.
Yep.
And knowing when not to say anything.
Yeah.
And that's those are the two parts of it. Sometimes not saying it is the best thing you can do.
And I think the sport of wrestling in particular makes it a little easier for you to get their punishment, so to speak. You know what I mean? Or their lesson very quickly, because there are few things in your life that you feel worse than losing a wrestling match.
Oh yeah, no question. Especially you wrestle a kid and you go out and you get pinned.
Oh yeah.
Or a kid just
you've been dominated. That's literally what that means.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very, when that happens, it's demoralizing. And again, that's why that's the great thing about wrestling is the kids have the opportunity to persevere, and they overcome real adversity. That's adversity. When you go out in a match and you lose, and some kid really pounds you.
Yep.
That's adversity. I mean, it's a blow to your ego.
Yeah.
And to be able to keep coming back and keep coming back, that, that serves you better in life. When you get older in life and you run into hard times, going through what you did with wrestling certainly helps.
You're absolutely right. And you bring up a point also about ego, because it's such a mano y mano kind of, I've got to have this will and determination type sport. That being said, you also have to balance that out with being cocky. And you see a lot of wrestlers these days who put their feathers up and they strut around the ring and or around the mat, and they have this whole persona that they put on. How do you see that balancing the egoic side of wrestling in a positive way with it in the kind of the negative trade off with it as well?
Well, I'm not really I'm not a big fan of kids making it about them
Yeah,
when they wrestle.
yeah,
So when we had an instance this year. One of my kids sort of did that. He had a kid on his back and then waved to me,
yeah,
and immediately the entire team, but myself, all conveyed that it just wasn't acceptable. And
yeah.
I tell the kids, I tell them, when you win the state title and you want to celebrate, then we'll celebrate.
Yeah,
But other than that, you want to have respect for your opponent and respect for the other people in the room,
yeah.
and understand that your opponent is trying to win matches too. So by making fists and doing that, it's not and my kids know I'm not a big fan of that. I think it's all about having respect for yourself, having respect for your school, having respect for your opponent.
I think that's a
You know,
fantastic point and something that's overlooked in other sport, because I think we look at society wise, we look at the guys who are showboating and they get attention
oh
whether
yeah,
it's good
yeah,
or bad,
exactly.
right?
Well, it's funny. My oldest son, um, the only time he ever celebrated was his last
Yeah.
match.
Yeah.
His last match at the NCAAs, he raised his hand. He never did all the way through, and he used to say, he goes, if I celebrate, I'm actually raising my opponent, because what? I'm not supposed to beat you. And like his take would be like,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to beat you. I don't have to celebrate. And there's a little bit of truth to that, but I think a lot of it is just about, you have to have, again, it comes back to it's not about you, it's about respect.
Yeah.
And even like with coaching, like you want to bring like ego into it.
Yeah.
And I said this in the beginning when we were talking. It's not about me. It never is. It can't be. If it's
Yeah.
about me, then I can't coach anymore. So a lot of coaches, though, I see this, is their ego in terms of sometimes their style of coaching.
Yep.
They want to will their kids, like they have to do it my way,
Yep.
or this way, or this sort of style. And I think that's another great thing about Coach Amuso, and I learned this, is that and listen, he didn't have to take a backseat to anyone, and he's another one who forgot more wrestling than anyone knows. But toward the end, and we had some really high end kids, he never got in the way of them. And I've seen coaches get in the way of their own kids, where they're trying too hard to put their imprint on the kid
Yep.
for themselves, not for the kid.
Yep.
And you can't do that. And like people ask me, the hardest thing I had to do in terms of coaching my son was to let him go.
Yeah.
So he got to the point of 10th grade. After 10th grade, he got to the point, like, he didn't really need me in terms of technical knowledge and stuff. My job was to be, at that point, his father and support him.
Wow.
And now it was not an easy thing to do, but I had enough common sense to know that I'm not getting in the way. It's like, you have a thoroughbred horse, you let him run. So when you get really good athletes, sometimes you got to coach them. It's not like I'm telling you you can't coach them, but sometimes you got to let them be what they are. You know what I mean? You have to let them be what they are. And that's easier said than done.
Absolutely. And, trying to wrap kind of this up a little bit, perhaps some advice or words of wisdom in your now 30 years of coaching, A-Rod, of one, because you've been a parent of a high level wrestler, but also as a coach of many high level wrestlers. What would you say to other parents who are coaching wrestlers, or who are parents of wrestlers, obviously? What words of wisdom can you give to them to allow them to, let's say, be the best parent they can be for a wrestling, for a wrestler?
I think it's just a matter of, again, you go back to communication and you have to sort of know your kid and you got to support them. And sometimes supporting them means not talking about wrestling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not talking about it and try to, you got to be able to read your kid and what makes your kid tick. And, um, every kid is different. So, I think a lot of times we have these parents that are just overbearing
Mm.
and they want it almost more than the kid does.
Yeah.
And what will happen, and I've seen this happen, where you'll see a kid react when he gets into adversity. And
Yep.
this actually happened. Happened this year, not to one of my kids, but to another kid, where the kid reacted in such a way. I think it was almost like self-sabotage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where he did not, where he ended up, he almost like he lost on purpose
Yep.
because he just didn't want to deal anymore with the father. So again, it all comes back to again the communication. You
Yep.
know what I mean? And it's, again, saying the right thing and sometimes not saying anything.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's heartbreaking when you're a wrestling parent because your kid is doing great, he's doing great, and then he loses, and it's like you see the hurt and the pain in them, and it's hard. It's the hardest sport to be a parent. There's no question in my mind. It's
Yeah.
the hardest sport. But again, it's just knowing your kid and just being supportive. You don't have to be his coach. Be his parent.
Yeah, that's great. And on the flip side of it, as a very experienced coach, multiple state champions, multiple section championships. I mean, perhaps one day you'll be in the Section 1 Hall of Fame there, A-Rod, but obviously those days are still ahead of you.
Well, yeah, I don't think I really. I appreciate you even saying that, but it's really not something I honestly really think about. I try to keep things simple, and again, like it comes back to Coach Musso again, where I just like I don't jump ahead. I really think of one day at a time.
Yep.
So like I even with my kids, and my kids will tell you that we're worrying about today and then tomorrow, and like when we get to like the dual meets, I'm not worried about the dual meets 6 weeks from now. I'm
Yeah.
worried about the next dual meet. And that's why I just try to keep everything where let's just worry about today and let's work on trying to get better today. And then I think if you do that, what happens is the kids get into that mindset. And I think if you start talking about things, if you start talking about winning a state title or a section title in November
Yeah.
with some kids when they get there, what will happen is you make this event so monumental that it becomes bigger than it is. So, we never talk about winning. We really never talk about winning. We never really talk about losing. It's just about preparation and just one day at a time. And, just prepare yourself to be the best that you can be. And if you can do that, you're giving yourself a chance to win.
And to finish it up, where does that come from in you, A-Rod?
I don't know. Again, I think I've been very fortunate. I've been around really great coaches, Jim Guccione and Rochelle, who was, like a brother to me, Coach Amuso. And I'm just, I guess it's, it is, I'm just trying to be observant.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not perfect. And, I've made plenty of mistakes. And with coaching, I made tons of mistakes. And you try to just learn from it, and I think if you can make it again where you don't make it about you, and the main objective is to help the kids, then I think you have a chance. Once it becomes about what you doing and about you, then you sort of lose focus of that.
Well, I think that those are some amazing words of wisdom, and I really appreciate you as not only a father but as a coach, as a friend. And I think in this conversation, I've got to make a trip to Westchester County and get to Fox Lane sometime in November through December to watch the Foxes in a dual meet. I think that's something I'm going to be doing next year.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. And that's funny. I always tell stories. The kids, the older kids now, they've heard all the stories. But I
Yep.
tell stories of all the former wrestlers.
Yeah.
And I always tell the story about you was your last practice. It's your senior year, and you're obviously trying to win a section title and potential state title.
Yeah.
And most of the kids at that last practice, you're trying to get, you're trying to get yours. You're trying to prepare yourself to get ready to wrestle. And I remember you were working. I forget the wrestler's name, but you were working with a JV kid on a breakdown, and you spent like 10 minutes with him working on a breakdown, and that just struck me like This is his senior year. No one would fault him if he's out there trying to make himself better for this weekend. And you were working with a kid who most likely never was going to maybe even be a varsity wrestler.
Yeah.
And I talked to my kids about that, like the complete unselfishness that you showed, and what a great leader you were. I mean, our success, we had a lot of great wrestlers, but you were the leader. You were the key cog to that team. And I still talk to my kids about that, about giving back. And it's not just about always winning and losing, it's doing the right thing and helping others. And that was something I thought you were amazing at, and you just had that natural gift for that. But by you being that way, sort of seriously helped me even being a better coach.
Well, I really appreciate that. And it's really cool. And I it's weird to feel a sense of like pride and respect for a program that I haven't been like physically a part of for 15 years. But when I see Fox Lane Wrestling make another section title win, I feel like, damn, like I'm a part of that. And it's really cool to actually see that. And I know within our community, like not in an egoic way, like, oh, I did that, but I'm like, damn, like my work that I put in, you could see it years after, the ripple effect. And I know Steven's probably going to think the same way in, another 5 or 10 years when he goes, wow, more state championships, because the kids that were 8 and 10 years old coming to watch the matches, they were watching me, you know what I mean? And I know for me, like looking at the older guys who are above me, that's the reason why I was there. And it's wonderful to see this almost like this olive tree that was planted, 50 years ago, basically from Coach Amuso, still bearing fruit.
Yes, it's still growing. And again, you and Max O'Hague and Mike Kuklo, we had all those, you think about Steven and the Grippies and Spinos, They were all young, and they watched you guys, they idolized you guys. I mean, Steven would wrestle in his kids tournaments and do the same things that you did.
Yeah, slapping kids in the head.
yeah, right. And he would do the same things. And again, you're right. It grows. And from one generation to the next generation, the kids look and they see, like I said, it started with you. It really did. You and Max and Mike. And then it went to, the Spinos and the Grippies and my son. And then now this group of kids who saw my son wrestle, and now we have a new generation of kids.
That's so cool.
That the young kids can go look at and like, all right, it won't be about Steven anymore. It will be about, the kids I have on this team.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a snowball. It's a snowball that you roll down the hill, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
That's amazing. Well, Coach, thank you very much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. And I know you got the state championships coming up, and good luck in the tournament.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is a pleasure. This is like I said, this is so great catching up with you.
I appreciate it, Rod. And be well, my friend.
All right, thank you. Talk to you soon.
Take care. So there you have it. Coach Anthony Rodriguez, or A-Rod as I call him, dishing out some major knowledge tonight and some great wisdom. Guys, if you enjoyed the podcast, please consider subscribing and please rate and review. That allows us to grow the podcast. We really appreciate you listening. Have a good one.